Hey BookTube, it's Greg from Coffee/Books. You'll notice I'm wearing my glasses. I took out my contact lenses because it's late at night here, and I have to stay awake because I have a conference call back in the States in about a half hour. So I figured while I'm waiting, I'll just share what I finished reading with you today. Oh, they're kind of crooked. Okay, so I just finished reading James Baldwin's Giovanni's Room, and I remember reading James Baldwin's notes of a native son in high school or college. It was one or the other. And the reason why I picked this up, I think it was from one of my hauls when I went to the States, is because Camo, from What Camo Reads, I'll link his BookTube channel below, he had posted a haul, or he had gotten this delivered or something on Instagram. So I just read the synopsis. I was like, oh, I have to read that. So yeah, I read it. Not very long. It's like 160 pages. So I read it between yesterday and today. It didn't, so basically it is about a young American man in his late 20s who goes to live in Paris in the 1950s. And while he's there, he's kind of, discovering himself, which is like a phrase we seem to use a lot, or finding yourself. So he goes to Paris and he meets a woman who I guess they fall in love and maybe they get engaged. And then she goes off to Spain for a while and he's in Paris by himself. He is broke and gets kicked out of the hotel that he was staying in. And one night he's out at a bar, and Giovanni, who's the bartender, who's an Italian guy who's working in France, they strike up a conversation. One thing leads to another, and he ends up moving into Giovanni's room in a house. Well, it's like a house. I don't know how you say it, like a boarding house, and he's living just in one room because he had nowhere else to go, and they hit it off basically. And from the first night, it turns romantic. So it's about how they share this room and the romance that blooms between them while his fiance is away in Spain. And he's basically waiting for her return. He doesn't know what's going to happen, if they're both going to go back to the States together and settle down and have like a normal life. So it's very interesting in terms of the fact that this set in the 1950s, and of course James Baldwin was an iconic writer who openly discussed and wrote about LGBT issues long before it became trendy or maybe more common than it was in like the past 20 years in the 80s or 90s and today. So I think it was as I'm reading it, I'm like, wow, this is pretty bold for the 50s. Like, I'm sure some people were up in arms about it, or it was censored, or all that kind of stuff. So it's definitely a good story about a young person torn between two loves. Spoiler alert, he ends up being with nobody because once his fiance comes back, he wants to go on with her because he wants to get married and have a kid and do these things that he's supposed to do as part of a heteronormative lifestyle. And Giovanni takes it badly because he's very emotional Italian, and Giovanni ends up murdering the boss who had fired him. And so because of this, he went to jail. And so the main character, David, he was like, okay, him and his fiance were like, okay, let's leave Paris and start over somewhere else. And once they leave and they go to a different city, I think in the south of France, he still can't forget Giovanni. It still kind of haunts him. And she notices that and then realizes what had happened while she was gone and that they loved each other. So she leaves him and he ends up just being there by himself. So it's definitely a sad story. It's also a good story about emotional connections, love, both between two men and a man and a woman, because he still does have love feelings for her. I don't really like her character that much. She's I wonder if it was written specifically where it seems like she doesn't offer anything. She's more of just like an annoyance, in my opinion. So I don't know if that was supposed to represent something. But, so that's James Baldwin's Giovanni's Room. I know it's an old book, and I wish I had read it a long time ago, but there's no time like the present. I definitely want to read more of James Baldwin, besides the stuff I read in high school. I really like his writing style and how he describes things, especially because Paris in the 1950s seems kind of glamorous and charming and lots of wine and all that kind of stuff. So Anyway, that's what I finished reading. Not sure what I'm going to read next. Like I said, I'm trying to read all the books that I'm going to have to eventually get rid of or donate before I depart the country in 6 or 7 weeks. So I'm just going to pick the next book off my shelf and just start reading it. So yeah, well, thanks for watching. I hope everyone's having a good night wherever they are. And I'll talk to you later. Bye.